question 1, question 2, and I ended up thinking, this process is very simple. It's step 1, step 2, step 3. But now you're asking about step 5, step 7, and really having a conversation then made me realize what they wanted was the understanding or the assurance that whatever we had done in that process would not come back to bite them. So whereas for me, my risk appetite is a bit higher than theirs. So for me, I'm like, we've done this process, we've followed 1, 2, 3. And so I think we should be good to go. If anyone asks you what happened, just tell them to come to me. But the person is like, no, I'm also in this city. I'm also in this meeting too. And my name is going to be on that document. So I want you to tell me that you've done 1, 2, 3, so that I feel that my brand is not being affected by questions. So the thing is, the same thing you're thinking about others are probably thinking about you. And it is because of the way that we then phrase our expectations, our understandings with each other. So teams struggle because of different reasons. Yeah. One that makes us fundamentally different is different motivations, or even what I like to say, different needs. Yeah. They say that if you can understand someone's need, then you can be able to really understand how to talk to them, how to communicate with them. So different motivations, what energizes one person? For me, my need is to see movement. For me, is to see progress, yeah, to see us achieve. In fact, to make a day go well, I have a task list, not to organize myself, because some people have task lists to organize themselves. Mine is to tick so that I can feel good that I've achieved something. So it's a goal thing. And I want to see, yeah, I've done another one. Yes, I've done another one. Whereas for something else, the need for that task is more to organize their day. And so therefore they can feel they can tackle what they have to do. So our needs are different. And so we are motivated to do different things differently. And then we also have very different communication styles. I admire people who speak with diplomacy. That's an aspiration that I have. I try so hard, but it never quite comes out the same way as people that I admire, measured words, measured sentences, the words that we choose to use, the level of directness or bluntness. Sometimes it's different expectations, yeah? One person's expectation could be one person's, bare minimum. Like, I expect you to write this email and follow up with this other one after 2 days. And then after that, give a call to this person to find out what's happening. Well, the other person is like, I wrote the email. And I mean, that should be enough, right? So different expectations from all of us. And this varied from persons to persons. I may say something like, we need to get in touch with our clients to find out what they need. Someone will interpret that as, let's do a blanket email and ask our clients what they need. But I meant that you need to pick up a phone, you need to call them. I didn't communicate effectively. And you need to have a one-on-one, a heart-to-heart to them and find out how are we serving them and what else do they need. Both of them are going to achieve something, but my expectation is very different from the other person. And then the last is we have different definitions for urgency, yeah? And we need to do it right now goes to eventually. I have a team member who says, let's just take things as they come. And, the other team member is thinking, no. If we don't do it now, it will never get done. So those are just some of the differences that you find when you're coming into teams. And these are not the only ones. I'm just putting across some of the things that differ. And then when these ones are left acknowledged, when we don't sit and voice it and say, I notice that the way that you like to do things is a lot slower or maybe a lot more deliberate. That's the right word for me. So when we don't acknowledge these things as, other people's styles, and they then might compound over time and they become sources of frustration. So when I differ with someone significantly and we don't address that issue, it leads to mistrust, frustration, and me thinking that this person is possibly a difficult person to work, right? And so we differ with this person. It gets me a little bit frustrated, and maybe my frustration builds over time. And as we know, when we feel frustrated, we might tend to feel like some of us don't want to address that conflict immediately, so we let it simmer, while others want to address it immediately, but the way that they address it makes the situation worse. So this leads to two people then creating mistrust. So this is preventable, and we think that the entry point is awareness. And this is understanding that different styles call for different things. And the friction or the frustration that comes is not rooted in malice. It is rooted in just the differences in the way that we think and in the way that we act. So why does understanding people matter? Because creating or working with teams that are high performing, it just doesn't happen by accident. You have to take time to understand what drives, what stresses, what motivates, what engages each person. And this is where the work is. And I was watching a webinar the other day, and the lady was talking about, you have to create the time and the space to understand individuals, the time and the space. So if I create the time and the space to have coffee with an individual and get into meaningless banter and understand them, I start to see them for who they really are. And we remove the poise or image that comes with what we do. But I have to create that time and space. But usually we are so busy running around that we only interact with people, at transaction level when we need to do something with them. I mean, during our office meetings, and we might find that being able to sit with these people, with this person, for these hours, just doing nothing but, like I said, just banter over coffee, looks like a waste of time. But if we significantly invest in this and build an understanding of people, consistently, and look at it or take it as an investment into a high performing team, then we begin to understand how we can communicate with them in ways that land. It builds trust between that relationship. And so therefore, even before we ask, we already know we can ask. Yeah. Even when we communicate, we already know that if we communicate it in a way that's not clear, the other person will try and clarify that for us and will forgive us for sometimes when we don't do that effectively. So creating the time and the space, yeah, to understand people, it matters. Because without this insight, then you are working with everyone more or less the same way, and then you are frustrating others. The ones who work like you feel like they're MVPs. Others are obviously looking at how you're relating with the MVPs and thinking you're biased. And yet all along you thought you were a really good person, team member or manager. So one of the things that we use at Profiles to help teams understand themselves a little bit better is what we call the DISC profile. So this is a widely used behavioral assessment that helps people understand their tendencies and, of course, those tendencies of those around them. What I love about using a personality assessment such as DISC is that it gives you a language with which to describe people's preferences and people's priorities. So for example, we talk about DISC in 4 letters, but it actually has 4 words attached to it. So for example, like D is for dominance. And when I meet a dominant person or I encounter a dominant person, I know that they will be direct. They don't beat around the bush. They will focus on achieving the results. They're pretty decisive, and don't confuse decisiveness for making the right decisions. They make decisions pretty quickly. Sometimes maybe not the right ones, but they make them quickly, and they're pretty competitive, meaning that sometimes they may come across as aggressive and brash. Yeah. They're driven by challenge. And because they're driven by challenge, they also tend to challenge others. Yeah. And they're driven by control. Then meet the influence style, who, whenever you meet them, they are very positive. very energetic. They love having meetings. They love collaborating with others. They love the big picture. They can see where we are going. It's so far. They are very persuasive and charming, and they love connection. They're driven by connecting with others, and they're also driven by being publicly recognized. So these are not people you give recognition in private. And then we have the steadiness style. And these people are patient. When I meet them, they're diplomatic. They they pride themselves on being reliable. Empathy is their second name. Yeah, the middle name, the middle. It can be Vicky, empathy, Karuga, right? And then they're consistent, so you can always rely on them because you know they'll show up when they say they're going to show up, and they will do what needs to be done. But then because of this, then they're driven by providing stability for others, and they love sincerity. Yeah. And then there's a conscientious style, very deliberate, like the steadiness style, unlike the dominant and the influence, who are very, very fast paced. And these ones, they thrive on analysis, on being an expert. Therefore, they love the analysis and accuracy of what they produce because they're focused on quality results. So usually they focus on logic and precision. Now, no style is better than any other because each style brings real strengths. And if you belong to one style, one of the things that I believe we should stop doing, and this is something that has been done through the Strengths Finder, is to understand what strengths I bring to the team. Because in all honesty, as a human being, you cannot have everything as a strength. And I find individuals, after we've done a personality style, and they say, yeah, but I know it says I'm results driven and I'm decisive and competitive, and it's telling me I'm not reliable, I'm not consistent, but even those things I can do. So trying to be everything all at once, what are you saying? You're telling your teammates, I'm a one-stop shop. I don't need you for anything because I can do everything. But really beginning to understand the strengths that you bring and that those are enough. And that then you can then be able to understand, really, I know I may be a little bit details oriented, but on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably a 3. But there's someone over there who's a C who's probably a 10 when it comes to details. Now, rather than try and gain that strength, I can actually collaborate with this person and we can make a great team. So that's how people are different. And they are all then driven by different needs. And understanding what people need is what allows you to connect back with them, is what allows you to understand how to communicate effectively with them. So you can motivate each person, whether you're the team lead or not, you can motivate them the way they need to be motivated. So you might be having a person on your team and you're trying to focus them on a goal, but really they're focused on accuracy. And when we focus on quality and precision, well, then that means that deadlines might start being suggestions because we want to deliver something perfect, right? And when we focus on not spending time with people like the S style who need you to consistently be sincere with them. And this means that you can't just be fleeting. With the I, you can meet for 5 minutes, chat, high five each other, and that's okay. But with the S style, you need a little bit more time than that as an S colleague. Yeah. And for the Ds, if you're not showing them how they're winning and giving them difficult assignments, they might just get bored and move on. So different people will be motivated by different things. And then again, in teams, different people are stressed differently. It doesn't look the same for everyone. And each person is triggered differently. So beginning to understand how your team is getting stressed allows you again to know exactly how you can intervene. So the Ds, they don't like being micromanaged. And when you start sitting down with them to give them a step-by-step approach to how they should do something, then you are constraining them. They want to feel like they have contributed to decision making. And so they need that latitude to reduce the tension. If they feel like everything is being taken up and all decisions that are being handed down to them, then they start being stressed because they feel that lack of control. Yeah. And so what you can do here is allow them latitude in expressing how they want to do their work. And if they're your colleagues and you're having a collaborative project today, latitude on around how they wish to collaborate with you, of course, in agreement, so that you are asking, so how do we do this? Instead of saying, this is how we do it. And when they're giving their input, you can also give in your input. The eyes want to be included in a lot of things. In fact, I have an eye in the office and it doesn't matter, just include me. So we're having a talk about this, and especially if it's something that's full of energy, they will be there. Yeah. And they want to feel like they are helping and they are part of the big picture in the game. So we are constantly tapping into that energy in some of the things that we do, and we find that the I then feels as part of our community. Unlike the C's and maybe the D's, they do not operate well in exclusion or away from others. So if you have only one I person in the office, they really suffer because then they have to go and look for that kind of environment outside. And sometimes they do adapt. And as a team lead or as a colleague at work, it's just acknowledging that they'll probably need you to sit, have coffee. Sometimes that's the time and space you need to make with them. Affirm them when they do something publicly, of course. That is something that you have to also intentionally do. And then the S's, the stability that they love. So if we are having a meeting, an ad hoc meeting that just been called in right now, let's have a meeting right now. That produces a stress point for S's who love consistency and not abruptness in shifting priorities. Today we're here, tomorrow we're there. And then one of the things you will end up saying is, why can't everyone be agile? We're in an agile environment. So you need to move with the times. You must then realize that you are stressing the S personality because they need you to be consistent, communicate early, give me some time to internalize that, what it means. Before I come, don't send me a document and tell me, can you tell me what that means now? That's not how it works. I need some time. I need to take that document. I need to internalize it before I give you my considered opinion. Yeah. And just because I'm delaying my considered opinion does not mean that I don't have an opinion or something to say. And then, of course, the C's are stressed by their work being marked out with errors. And they're also stressed by uncertainty. I mean, you giving me a piece of work, but you're not clear. You're not clear on the deadlines. You're not clear on who it's being delivered to. Let's just do this right now. It's at a concept stage. So maybe perhaps because it's at a concept stage, we can see how, as you go along, we'll see how it plays out. Yeah. So all these are different personalities. And using this information around the 4 quadrants, because all of us are wired to fit into one of them by and large. So the priorities that we choose are by and large similar for the D's, similar for the I's. Of course, we always say you are a blend of all 4, but you tend to prefer certain behaviors over others. And then you tend to process information differently from others. And so therefore, if I'm looking at a statement and I'm seeing it as a statement that's asking me to actually act on something, and someone else is looking at it and thinking, okay, this is asking us to sit down and first think through before we do the action. So those are 2 different styles. So if I'm not clear on where you're coming from, that you have a need in ensuring first that you understand what's written and to think it through, that's your need. I then put you in a situation that is stressful for you because I'm saying, let's run with it. And I'm saying, no, let's first think about it. So once I understand what your need is, then we can co-create something that works for both of us, works for my need for action, that also works for your need for thinking things a little bit more than me. But then in that conversation, we are both acknowledging that we need different things. And unlike just forcing your way into doing something, that's not really I mean, once you force your way, then the other person feels unseen, they feel unheard, and more often than not they will be like, okay, you do it. And then that's again the beginning of frustration, because even for you, you end up doing that thing by yourself, which is frustrating. Then you say this person is being uncooperative and ended up doing this thing, and they're like, no, but you see, you didn't allow me the chance to, all those things. So you see, communication is is now moving on to frustration, which then escalates to unmeaningful conflict. Conflict can be meaningful and can be healthy. And so then that relationship, because me looking at you is not beginning to feel good, starts to degenerate, because then I may not also want to confront the fact that it needs to be addressed. So if you look at things this way, then you begin to see that most conflict at the workplace is not personal. In fact, when you start understanding about personality styles, you begin, as someone today who said this phrase, you begin to understand that you are not a target, or you are not the target. The person is trying to express a need which is different from yours. And if you can see where they're coming from and you can really understand, then you can make space for you to have conversations around how does this look like if we both win. Yeah. So the single most important reframe is that thought that conflict is not personal. We all come from different ways of thinking, different backgrounds. People are wired differently, not to make your life difficult, but because they're trying to understand how can this work in the way that they need. So most workplace conflict is preference based and it's not personal. And in fact, they say that most conflicts arise from personality clashes. I think it's about 63 or 67%. It's not about what's good or what's bad. It's about behavioral differences. And when people start modeling this, they move from blame to curiosity. One of the questions is, help me understand how you're seeing this, because maybe there's something that I'm missing, and the person can explain from their end whatever it is that they're seeing from their perspective, from their preference. And you start seeing a side of that coin that wasn't there. And these are some of the hacks that you can have when you are handling colleagues and trying to ensure that your relationships, even if there was a tense moment, are also moving into understanding and they're productive. So great leaders adapt their own leadership style to meet each person. And I usually say that as you advance up in leadership, you really don't have a choice, because you are the one. And if you listen to another webinar that I've done, I keep reminding us as leaders, we are the one that different sorts of people have to report to. And we don't choose these people, yet we have to influence them. We have to communicate effectively to them, because we need them to achieve results and we need to support them to achieve those results. But even if you look at it from a team member perspective, you also are one person dealing with different persons in the team. And so if you want to be effective, and we talk about this in emotional intelligence, the awareness of others, is to understand how your style will work well with some people, but how certain aspects of your style doesn't work well with some people. So the ability to flex your communication, the way you give feedback, the way that you manage people who are working with you, will require you to be constantly aware and curious about the people that you have in your team. So practice number one, learning what drives your team. Before you make assumptions, yeah, have conversations around what kind of work energizes someone. How do they prefer to receive feedback? Yeah. This sort of questions, another question that I really, really love, I've just said it here, is help me understand from your perspective. Yeah. What are you seeing that I'm not seeing? Yeah. Such questions help people feel seen and feel valued. And you reduce a lot of wasted effort. And I think for me, the best part of it is that you stop having assumptions on how people are seeing this and actually understand their motive or where they are coming from. And there are so many lines that you can learn, because sometimes it's because we don't know and we don't know what words to use because those have not been modeled to us. But in this World Wide Web, and even for ChatGPT, there are avatars that can help you start to learn how to communicate differently to different people. So you are able to think about possibly how you would answer to, say, for example, Rose, who's on this call, which would be different from how you'd answer to maybe someone else. And I just wanted to share, for example, one of the things that we do here, and I wonder whether I'm able to do that. Let me do new share. Let's see. So that I can just show basically what it means to understand different. So this is my screen. Let me know when you see it. And this is just the what we call the platform that we use when it comes to Disc for us. So Disc, for me, as you can see, Vicky, I have what we call a DI style. So I can learn about my style, yes, and it can give me a lot of information about what I do. But what I value most about this particular platform is my conversations with my colleagues. And I work with very many people. But internally, we have a small team, and some of them have the same style as me. Like Shim here has a DI style like me. Chris has an IS style. Faith has an S style. And so on and so forth. So if I look at someone like Liz, who's my personal, who works with me as an executive assistant, I can begin to look at her style and my style. What are the areas we're likely to work well together, and what are the areas that I should be aware of when she comes to work with us? And there is a section here that gives us how we think and how we behave. So for Liz and I, you can see Liz is very accommodating and I'm strong-willed. What does that mean? It means that I can tend to overlook advice and input from Liz because I'm very opinionated and very strong-willed. And Liz will keep saying, okay, okay. And so if I'm not aware of that, I am not going to be able to be getting any feedback from Liz, who is comfortable with just listening to me and accommodating what I want. And even if she may be hesitant, if I'm not careful about the words that I use, I may also tend to shut her down. So we're both a bit private. She's more focused on feelings. I'm more focused on logic. She's very tactful. As you can see, I'm very frank. There are problems that come with that. I'm very, very fast paced. In fact, I think I put too many things. Liz always tells me, Vicky, can you just slow down? Because right now I need more time to process these. And I have to remind myself that this difference is one of the ones that really stresses Liz when it comes to us two working together. And it does not mean that Liz is not doing what she's supposed to be doing. It means that her pace is steadier than mine. And so for me to be able to work efficiently with Liz, I have to consider that. And yes, Liz will stretch. She will move on up maybe to here in the middle where she'll carry out some tasks a bit too fast. But I must realize that it cannot be every week that we do this because then she gets burnt out. So one of the other things I learn about Liz is that when things get tense between us and we're trying to sort of resolve something, I'm very frank, she's very tactful. I'm very strong-willed, so I can, end up talking about my opinion, and she's very accommodating. So it says here, one of the things is that Liz may be surprised and offended by my bluntness because I'm frank. And because I can be so insistent on my perspective, I may sometimes neglect to really consider where Liz is coming from, meaning that I will neglect to consider Liz's feelings. So it tells me that when I'm working with Liz, I need to pay attention to her reactions to gauge the impact of my words. Because remember, I'm frank, and so I can therefore be blunt and not intentionally. I can say words that someone may consider to be too aggressive, right? So I have to watch the words that I use, and they're not the same words I would use with a D personality because we would both then be frank. then I have to remember that for Liz, I have to ask for opinions because she will not offer them. She will sit and she's comfortable sometimes just saying yes. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's her style. But if her and I are working together, it's ensuring that she has that comfortable space. So when I want to connect with Liz, it tells me, you may jump right into analyzing Liz's perspective. So she has sent me something and I'm busy there analyzing what it means without taking into consideration how do I acknowledge Liz's feelings, yeah? And then it even tells us, because both of you tend to keep to yourselves, you might miss out on chances to connect. So Liz and I, there's no time in the office we'll be looking for that time and space that I talked about to sit down and just get to know each other better because we value our private space. And yet that is so important. So it tells us to try and take opportunities to collaborate and catch up with each other. And so when we talk about collaboration, I start understanding the roadblocks that we have and the benefits that we actually have. And it gives us a tip, set a clear plan for who's responsible for what so nothing falls in the crack. And let Liz know when you feel strongly that more urgency is required. And then when I want buy-in, like I'm trying to sell something to her, one way we should be looking at or a direction that she should change. Maybe I've looked at this and I've thought, okay, this is not the way we should do things. Or even, like we said, I feel like she needs to do something a bit faster. So that's something that I need to sell to her. I cannot just say, do this faster. So we may both be resistant to considering the more practical implications of new opportunities. So it means we might bring in a third person who's a bit more realistic than both of us when we're discussing projects. So this, for me, has really helped me with my team and understanding where they're coming from. And I think the biggest thing it has also helped the conversation between Liz and I is really understanding what are the things we need to voice out when both of us are collaborating so that when we acknowledge these things and we speak to them, we understand. And it's always top of mind that we are both coming from different places and we should be aware of this so that we don't then, she doesn't clam up and not offer her opinion, her very, very important opinion on matters that I need to have that opinion. And that I also don't railroad because I can also be stubborn and strong-willed and not see how that is affecting our relationship. So the other practice is creating communication agreements. In teams, we call it creating a team charter for a team. And I think I write this on LinkedIn. Clarity is so important. But we are always so busy doing things that we don't take the time to sit and create this clarity around how do I communicate, clarity around response times, clarity around do we prefer WhatsApp or not. We just find ourselves in our subgroup and things are being shared, including memes and everything. And this kind of work, the work that requires you to slow down so that you can speed up, we don't do enough. So the work of creating clarity is that space where, as a team or as a relationship, you need to slow down fast and sit down and have a session or a meeting where these things are talked about instead of ignored, and clarity around how we do these things is done. I was with a team and they've been running everywhere, and they forget to delegate effectively downwards because they run, they push the work that needs to go down, but without clarity. So what has happened is that when people need to make decisions, then they have to send emails up. This has come up, what do we do about it? This has come up, what do you do about it? So they're like these emails or these questions, people are not holding themselves accountable and responsible to carry out work. But then you're sitting and you're thinking, okay, one of the problems here when you do a self-diagnosis and you ask for feedback is that we don't know what decisions we can make. And there's a matrix that's very simple. I think it's a RASI matrix that tells you about decision-making matrices. But you have to communicate this. For this decision, I just need to be informed. For this decision, I need to be involved. For this decision, very simple things that are available to us that can start helping us provide clarity. So I talk about here communication agreements, but clarity in itself as a thing is so important in so many of the things that we need to take time out to see those areas in teams that are causing us attention and provide clarity around them, especially if we are a team that wants to do better. Yeah. So whenever something happens, it's more about let's create clarity around this thing. Not because it's another nice to do thing, but because we want that sustainability of having a great team. The practice number 3 is a word that has been going around. It's about building psychological safety. How do we also do a pulse check and ask guys, are you still believing that you can speak up, ask questions, admit when you're wrong, or you share your ideas without fear of the social impact on you? And checking this regularly helps people also understand, or even as a leader, you understand whether you need to do more. What do you need to do? Do you need to model vulnerability, admit when you don't know anything? Do you need to look for sessions when other people take up your conversation so that they can also see how it feels to be on your seat? So building psychological safety, there's a book, I think, by Amy Edmondson. It gives a beautiful framework around building psychological safety and even gives the steps that you need to follow on building psychological safety. And then last but not least, trust, building trust. And trust is the foundation for teams and for relationships. But trust is not a feeling. I don't feel like I trust you. Trust is a process and it's a system, and it's built or it's eroded by different things. It could be eroded by systemic issues that people need to address that and make sure that they're working so that trust can be regained. It can be caused by our personalities. Like I mentioned, I am very frank. So just by the words that I choose to use, I can really destroy trust, especially if the other person on the other side does not understand my personality style and my need to just say it as it is and not to beat around the bush. So there are different things that break or build trust. And if you understand trust as something that we keep in check, then that as a team is to focus on what really builds trust for us, what breaks trust for us. Yeah. And can we commit to these things? Yeah. Can we commit that when we are coming for a meeting, we're going to actually say whether we're coming or not? Someone says, who's coming for the meeting? No one gives feedback. And after some time, guys are like, you never say whether you're coming, you don't say whether you're coming, or you say you're coming. We don't know what to expect. That uncertainty is not reflected. So creating trust, understanding that trust is a system and investing in it through consistency, follow through, also helps your team. It doesn't happen overnight, but remember, we need to slow down to speed up. We need to create the time and the space for these things to happen. So lead people differently, understand their styles, be flexible with your approach, and regularly check. Did my communication, was it received as it was intended? Yeah. And then doing 360s, I say, is one of the ways that helps leaders understand how are they showing up. It is another way that team members also understand how am I showing up for the people around me? How do I need to show up differently? So high-performing teams build trust, because with trust, people then feel they can conflict with each other. And when people can openly debate, it means that there is psychological safety, which allows all of us to take advantage of other people's opinions. I like saying that if I have an idea and I don't share it in a meeting, then I have not allowed it to be reviewed, checked, tested. And so by the time it's finished, I'm like, oh, okay. Every time I share an idea and guys dissect it, I'm like, okay, maybe it wasn't so great. Or, okay, it was not all great. There were certain aspects that need to be changed. But as long as that idea lives in you, it's perfect. As long as it has not been tested by sharing it with the world, it's perfect. And so when you leave meetings, you always imagine my idea would have worked. Yeah, it has not been tested. So we allow ideas to be tested for everyone so that people don't leave meetings thinking that, there were they can have meetings after the meeting. Yeah. People commit because communication is clear. People then can hold each other accountable to high standards. And then we can then focus on what we call team results. So it's not about having all the answers. It's about understanding what drives people, recognizing people's needs so that then you're able to use that to name those differences and to create sort of relationship frameworks or decision-making frameworks or whatever that is, reducing areas of tension, especially where you have control. Yeah. Increasing communication and building psychological safety, and then really understanding how to lead diverse personalities and adapting your style to diverse personalities. So the bottom line is, when we really seek to understand people and help them feel genuinely understood, and you have spoken to their needs, then you will communicate effectively. And so trust will grow. Meaningful conflict will also grow. Maybe unproductive conflict is what will reduce. And then we can say that we get the quality of relationships that then determine quality results. So with that, I will stop there for today and take a few questions from the webinar. Back to you, Rose. And
thank you so much, Vicky. We have one question from Megan, if I'm not wrong. She's asking, how can you bridge generational gaps in the workplace as a struggle to teams working together?
how can you reduce generational?
How can you bridge generational gaps in the workplace as a struggle to teams working together?
Okay. How can you bridge generational gaps in the workplace? First, I think each generation comes to the workplace differently. Yeah. So if I think about, like, older, mature organization, the older generation always feels like we've been here long enough. We know what normally happens. Then we have a different way of working. In fact, I think most guys say, why did you email me? Why could you just come to my office? We talk. We are a different generation. The other generation feels that, I've come to work for you. I need to see that this organization speaks to the values that I have. I think that generation is very different from us. So they look at it like, is my purpose fulfilled in what you're trying to do? They do things different. For them, digital is everything. They communicate over WhatsApp, over email. They may not see the value in coming and having a phone call conversation about something or calling you, because that's just not how they've grown. They've grown up in the era of what. So there are different nuances. They want to work flexi hours. They will still work, but they want to work flexi hours. Myself, I want to work 9 to 5. So I think it's about also recognizing these particular differences. And how do we recognize these differences? We encourage that feedback to come to us. So the generation that is definitely going to be in charge cannot simply ignore the needs. Remember, we talk about needs of the other generations. And there should be a mechanism of always checking and seeing what really is making people feel fulfilled at work. And someone was sharing in the morning today that you may want to reward people, then you don't use cash necessarily as a reward. But then you might tell people, you know what, by the way, guys, let's have one day work from home. And for someone with a young family, that's such a great thing. But for someone who they want to see people in the office, or they want to be in an environment that helps them work, that might not be so useful. So then you've provided something that not everyone has useful. And I think now we can afford to be more agile than we ever were. So for me, I would say first is to stop imagining what work looks like. Stop feeling like, for us, hard work was everything. But now we have this AI thing where people are using 2 minutes to do something. So, and start understanding what do people really see as input, yeah? So encouraging that feedback to come through, having little groups to dissect it and what it means, and then being able to translate those needs for the different people, of course, depending on the numbers. Then creating a shared purpose. People like to unite over shared reasons for being together. Any team, besides the normal KPIs that come with our jobs, any team can create a shared goal for the month or the year. And those things really drive teamwork. And the shared goal could be something very simple, like we're all going to do 10,000 steps, or we're all going to do this, this, and the other, or we're all going to, for this quarter, for this team, let's see, because we've looked at our numbers, we've seen maybe we need to cut on costs. We're all going to try and see if we can, who's going to shave off the most costs and become cost efficient over this. So you see, that becomes a shared goal. We have KPIs, but all of us are united in this particular goal that we're chasing. And so that means that I'm not going to get distracted with all the other sideshows that come. So those are some of the things. And of course, understanding their different personalities, what brings them, what drives them. And last but not least, I think that every single person should equip themselves with a coaching certification and learn how to ask questions. You see, when you lead with questions, then you are trying to generate insights for you to be able to be a better leader. And the art of asking questions is actually a skill. How can I ask more effective questions from the people around me so that I can be able to respond more meaningfully? So if you look at it that way, then feedback becomes a tool to get to understand what to do better. So go online, take a course on leading by coaching, learn how to ask meaningful questions. And it doesn't matter which generation you're leading, because you're leading first with curiosity to understand the people. I think it's Steve Covey said, seek first to understand and then to be understood. So that would be my reply.
Thank you very much, Vicky. On the chat, we don't have any other question. Maybe could you have, we have PO who've raised his or her hands. PO, please, you may proceed.
Thank you very much, Vicky, for the beautiful session. Where do we...
You're welcome.
Thank you. How do we... I don't even know how to ask this question, but I'm looking at... allow me to paint a scenario of a very domineering boss, a very... there's an example you gave in the session that your colleague, the example you gave, of the person who is very accommodative, and the Vicky who is very straightforward. So on the other side, the example I've always been asked, but I don't know how to answer nicely, is the domineering boss and the employee who is almost like your colleague,
Okay.
only needs clarity, but clarity is not given by this boss. How does this person really excel? Like, someone asked me this and I don't know how to answer them. Because the person feels that they've communicated, this other person is like, why don't you just be clear and I'll do what you want? Sometimes the reverse happens. You just you are micromanaging to the point of thinking that you don't know what was I employed to do, Hiya. Over to you. I don't know about it, but I've said the scenarios I feel.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that thing comes to two things. One, the one that's supposed to be there, but is not always possible, is a system issue, an organization issue that enables this person to be able to have these difficult conversations, right? So, and that's not always there because not everyone has possibly been able to constitute something that works to support, what do you call it? Feedback, yeah? And that's one of the things you need to be aware of as a leader. How do I facilitate this feedback so that I can also see, because I actually benefit from it? The second one, which is again not within your control, is that takes competence, and then that builds into courage, and that into confidence, and then into courage. If this person does not have the competence to ask, they've never asked before, or they have never dared to ask before, or they've never dared to bring these questions to light. You see, the difference between people who do these things, if I meet someone like that, sometimes I was with a colleague someone who was exactly like I was describing my colleague, but they ask, even Liz asks, because it's something she has done over and over again, so she doesn't have that fear. I sit down and listen, not an easy thing to do, but it's a competence I've developed over time. And in fact, because I'm very defensive naturally with my personality style, the competence I've developed is when I'm being attacked, I ask many questions. You see, I've already even said when I'm being attacked, and I'm not being attacked, it's a personality thing. When someone is giving me feedback, one of the things that I learned was to ask questions. So we develop competencies in other things, but we forget that we also have to develop competencies in just being human and being able to react to situations differently. So if I'm in the situation of these people, I would advise them to first go and understand that art of having difficult conversations. There are books, get a mentor, and then maybe start doing it, not so much little, get someone who can sit with you and show you, when your boss does this, because the guys were excellent in this, why don't you try this? Give me feedback. But they have to want. Remember, when we feel unpleasant emotions, what do? Every time we feel an unpleasant emotion about something, we deprioritize it. So I think about challenging my boss and asking about further clarity. I'm like, hey, do I really want to do that? I deprioritize it. And next time I just sit there and I listen in, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll do what happens. So I'm deprioritizing building that muscle that I require to be able to handle not only this situation, but other situations as they come into the future. So there's a competence issue over there that leads then to the confidence. There's so many trainings now that empower women. It takes time, and let me not just say women and men. There's be your next best self. There's all these things that give you what you need, the tools you need to be a bit more assertive. But the onus honestly has to start with you. And if the organization is not the kind of place that has already provided these frameworks where you can be able to give this feedback and people can listen, they have 360s, and they have feedback on how I'm being managed and things like that, because those avenues really help a lot. If they don't have that, you see, now that's not within your control. What's within your control is now working on yourself. That's the answer I would give.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vicky. Thank you, Pio, for also sharing that question. Could we have anyone maybe who would want to ask any question? You can mute or you can chat us. Okay, Vicky, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's 7:01, and we always like at least closing within the hour. So thank you so much for coming. I did mention the disc when I was talking. If this is something that you would like to take advantage of, we do offer what we call the Everything Disc that comes with the platform that I shared. And of course, it's a great tool for you to start understanding others and having your teams also understand how to work well together. So you can reach out to us. It's called the Everything Disc Workplace, and we can then be able to start having that conversation with you and your teams. We can also certify you to deliver it, whether it's at the workplace, for your teams, or just for yourself as a consultant as well. So Rose has put our contacts in the chat, but also I'm sure because you've registered for this webinar, we shall also be sharing information that you can use to follow up. And with that, I think I would like to end this webinar and say thank you very much for joining in. And I do wish you a lovely, lovely evening. Thank you.